it's Joanna from Nesting Story, and today I wanted to talk to you about the correlation between mental health and decluttering and clutter. If you've been watching my channel, you know I've been on a decluttering journey for over a year now, but really intensely this past year, and it is not over yet. And for those who are new to my channel, I am a mom of 4 kids aging 9, 7, and then almost 4-year-old twins, and a husband, and we've also got a 7-month-old rescue puppy. So we're busy, we're really busy. So I started to declutter, I would say, after the dust settled after having my twins. We got ourselves into a real mess, to be honest. Partially because my husband and I think we didn't think before making purchases before having kids. And then we went through a really difficult time when we had our son. He had a language delay and there were some other issues we were trying to deal with. And I think that we were using purchases and items and toys for him as this way to, because we thought we were being good parents that way. And I've really retrained my thought process since then, and realized that that's not the best way, but that honestly is how our journey got started. And then we were surprised with twins, and that was just a whole different ball game. And we were in such survival mode that we just started to shove things in closets. We were accumulating a lot of stuff, not all new purchases, a lot of hand-me-downs, just to be able to care for twins and survive. And then after our twins and the dust kind of settled, then because we had been through so much with that, we realized our marriage needed attention. And so again, we put a lot of projects aside to really focus on relationships within our family and make sure that everyone and everything was just healthy. Then I turned around and looked at our home. And actually, I've told this story before, but the real moment that it hit me that I didn't have to live this way, I was at a friend's house about a year ago. And this is a friend I've known for a long time, but she had just moved into a new home and she has 2 kids. And I walked around her home, and I wouldn't consider her a minimalist, but everything had a home. Her home was very tidy. In fact, we came over unannounced and she looked like she had been getting ready for guests for a long time. Now, I would classify myself as a naturally messy person, and I think my husband is a bit too, and I really want to change how I'm wired, how I function, and patterns and routines in my everyday life. And I'm trying to get there, but I definitely would not say I'm there yet. But it's a process. And so after going to my friend's house, I vowed that I would start working through our home and purging, and we have been on a journey, and I've learned a lot of things, and we're still getting there. And I've learned also what works and what doesn't, and I've pulled inspiration from different areas. So I really wanted today to talk about how that's impacted me with my mental health and my happiness and our family's happiness, and little bits that I've learned that work. So first of all, before I decided to go on this journey, I couldn't figure out why I was so stressed and felt so overwhelmed all the time. Now, I have 4 kids, and I also run my own full-time business from home. So I'm already a very busy person, and I know that being busy with my work and family life makes me the happiest, but I couldn't shake this overwhelming feeling. And it did hit me that it was the stuff. I just felt like I was embarrassed about areas of my home. Places didn't have homes, and there was a lot of broken things and things that we've outgrown that I just hadn't taken the time to get rid of. So we started our process, and that was our first big purge, which we documented, and we got rid of a lot of stuff, and then we were on a roll. And so we have moved through our home, which you can go to the links below and watch all the videos, from area to area, purging. So I have been pulling inspiration from different places, and one of the major places I've been pulling inspiration from is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. So I read this at the beginning of my journey, and have definitely used the Konmari method when it comes to a lot of areas of my home. The biggest thing I think the Konmari method has helped me with was to help figure out emotion and how it is associated with physical items. So she recommends that each item you take out, you actually physically touch and think quickly, does this spark joy? And I've really used that in everything I do. I really make sure that I am putting my hands on everything, and really you can start to make really quick decisions that way and not look back. So that's been very helpful for me. I've also, as much as I could, wherever I've tried to purge an area, pull everything out and then purge and then put everything back in. Instead of just going into a drawer and pulling a few items that you think you need to get rid of, I take everything out. When it comes to categories, this is where it gets a little tricky when it comes to a family of 6. So, and there's been a lot of interesting conversations in the comments of my videos. Some not so nice, but that's okay. I've left them there so you can go and have a look at what everyone thinks. The thing is, when it comes to this method, and I've done some digging actually, there's not a lot of examples of how to work with a larger family or a slightly bigger home. These are a lot of examples of often a single woman in a smaller home or apartment, sometimes a couple, and that's when you can really go by category, where you take, say, all your socks out and then sort all your socks and all, you know. But when it comes to a bigger family, as someone who has actually been really purging a lot of stuff over the past year, you have to sometimes go by room or by dresser or by closet, and it's a necessity. And the interesting thing, doing my digging with Marie Kondo, I did some sleuthing with some YouTube videos, and I watched a bunch of interviews with her, and there was a segment I found on a morning show. She was helping a host from a morning show purge her home, and so she first focused on her closet and her personal items, and then she asked if she could help purge the kids' stuff. Well, then I noticed that Marie Kondo actually went and started just purging entire closets at a time and doing a whole bunch of different categories at once. So that made me feel a little better, because I think there's been a lot of there's been some controversy about how I've sometimes approached areas. So whatever works for you, really. And if you're going on this journey right now, I think you really need to pull inspiration from everywhere and then just start doing what works for you. The 2 areas that I've found have really worked and really stuck, and this is really showing how I need to approach everything, is my toy storage closet in my basement, which I did a couple months ago. I didn't even spend a penny. I used what we had, but I created a home for everything I put back. And our recent garage purge, my husband built a bike rack, and we built storage for all the sports balls. And not only has that room stayed tidy, but our kids will actually go in the garage with the doors closed, especially my little ones, so I know it's safe. They'll play in there, they'll put everything back, and they'll come back in. And I think that that is the key to my entire family's success. And I actually will probably be going back over some areas that I've done before and making sure everything actually has a physical home. Not just it lives there, but maybe even more specific as to a home where that item sits. So that's something that I've really realized works for our family. What I'll be doing in the future is making separate videos for things like tips that I've learned when it comes to making purchases and how I've been able to be more mindful about the purchases I'm making, and tips about how to declutter when you have a larger family. And I really wanted to touch a bit on mental health here. So when it comes to decluttering and minimalism, so I would say that I'm trying to strive for a more minimalist life, but I wouldn't say that my goal is to go full minimalist. For me, home is my favorite place in the world, and I like to have a beautiful home, and I think everything should just have a my goal is to get rid of the stuff and the clutter. And for me, the stuff and the extra clutter and the junk, it really can make me feel anxious. It can make me feel really low, really depressed, and it can make me feel like I can't tackle other goals. Like it's this thing that just sits, and it's just so heavy on my soul. And I know that every single time I purge an area, I feel so much lighter. And getting rid of, really going in, getting rid of some of the stuff that my kids have grown out of, and getting rid of broken things, or just even really dealing with things that are hanging over us. Like maybe it's mail, unopened mail, not bills. We make sure we deal with our bills, but unopened mail that's just piling up. And we're still struggling with finding a system for this. But every time I do purge any area, I can feel myself and my mentality shift. And it's like, I'm a very visual person. And when I think about anxiety and some depression that I can sometimes struggle with, which I've struggled with since I was a child, but I've always been able to put things in place and do specific things to manage that. I picture it as like we all have an armor. And what creates a strong armor for me would be things like decluttering and feeding my soul. So going for a run for me, especially when I'm feeling anxious or I know I'm about to have to deal with something that's causing me anxiety, if I go for a run that morning, I can handle it. It's like it's built up my armor. Things that can take away from my armor and almost make me feel like my nerves are raw and I can't, like I just feel so sensitive to the world, is things like toxic relationships and the stuff in my home, and sometimes feeling overscheduled. And so that's when I make sure that I stop and take control of those things. Now, recently I've learned that that's not the only thing. Actually, sometimes the best medicine for building up your armor again is laughter and letting go, say having a girls' night out and just having a blast. So that is also important. But when we're talking about decluttering, I think that decluttering, not just with physical items, but people in your life or being overscheduled or commitments that are really not serving you and serving your soul and making you feel like a centered person who is not just surviving, but thriving. I think that it's important to look at decluttering across the board at what you have on your plate and who is in your life, and really thinking about where you're going to minimize and put your energy into. So I'm going to continue on this journey, and I absolutely am. In fact, I think I'm going to really dive deeper into this journey of decluttering and purging and how it applies to a larger family, because really my mission here on Nesting Story is overall to share how I'm reclaiming my home and my life again after having kids, and still being a great mom, but not losing myself in the process, not losing my home, not losing my identity and my happiness, and how that trickles into motherhood and being a wife and a partner, and making me the best possible version of myself I can be by taking it all back and taking care of myself. So I cannot wait to go and dive into my next projects. I believe my twins and my son's closets are next on my list that I can tell is just hanging over me. We can barely get the door open, so that's the next on the list. Anyways, I'd love to hear from you. First of all, how many people are in your family? And how did you get to this place of decluttering, if that's the journey you're on? And also, what does decluttering do for you? Do you find that there's a direct correlation with your mental health and how cluttered your space is? Or do you find that the two are very separate and you can really live with clutter? Or are you naturally a clutter-free person? Let me know. I'd love to hear your comments, and there will be a lot more to come. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love for you to subscribe. Bye.